Welcome to All Four Downs podcast. I am Joe Aguirre. Another fantastic week of college football, and for the most part, things went as expected. We're going to get into some of the big games. Obviously, coming up this week, there's some huge matchups. It seems like another week goes by. Of course, we're going to have to talk about another bonehead coach. It's one who we've talked about before, and it's one who will no doubt talk about again. Ovi will give you his top 25. We'll continue to give us our picks. I hit 17 out of 20 on my parlay last weekend. Cincinnati killed me. And then to the final whistle. We're going to talk about the college football playoffs, but in a way that may never have occurred to you, especially if you're an Alabama fan. It'll all tie together and it'll all make sense. Ovi Muniz, how we do last week, man? How did we do last week?
I was the opposite of you. And it was by 3 points in many games. Okay. The biggest game, of course, was Oregon. Oh no, do I got the wrong week? Yeah, I got the wrong week. I'm sorry. Ohio State and Penn State.
Yep.
I didn't win. I didn't win. I thought it was gonna be a closer game, down to the wire, but I was still disappointed. I mean, it was a close game. And I had some exchange of words with our fellow podcasters of the Keys brothers.
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
tell you right
Keys
now,
to the city.
Trevor texted me to make me aware of what was happening between you guys.
Oh, and I hope he didn't take it personal because I didn't
No,
take it personal.
he stands
Um,
by what he said.
and I'm gonna stand by what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna say it live right here. So don't miss it because I have some words about that game coming up on first down. But this bonehead top story, and it's sad because when we start the season in college football, it was always about the games. It was always about straight up wins and losses, who's next, who's gonna be who up, and it's always overshadowed. This season alone is probably the worst season of college football for one thing: coaches. Coaches. We started with Deion Sanders. We went ahead and talked about Brian Kelly. Then we jump on Notre Dame's coach for not prepping his men. How you not have enough men to play defense?
2 plays in a row. Jeez. And you're a
You know,
defensive specialist. Oh, come on. What is
and
going
then
on
you
with
got
these guys?
like there's always news about coaches, and then there's the discipline of players of not doing the right thing off the field, and now you have a cheating scandal. Okay. And we'll start off with first down's first story right here. And it's the sign stealing investigation that's going on, conducted by the NCAA. First and foremost, I'm going to tell you this right now. And the biggest question is, why Jim Harbaugh? John or Jim? Is it John
Jim.
Harbaugh? Jim. It doesn't matter. The head coach of the University of Michigan, why he's always on the spotlight? This guy was claimed to be one of the top coaches in Stanford, turned that organization around to be a winning team. Okay. Something that Stanford didn't have for a very long time or ever. Okay. They made their name known at the Pac 12 conference, right? He left to become the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, granted, the last time the 49ers ever went to the Super Bowl was probably during the Joe Montana era. Okay. He took over there, and with Colin Kaepernick, if you remember, he was the starting quarterback for the 49ers, took that team to the Super Bowl and lost to his brother from the Baltimore Ravens, right? You remember that?
Yep.
Middle of the game, the lights went out, and then all of a sudden the Ravens came and make a comeback. I mean, you can make a movie out of it. But then he had a falling out with the San Francisco 49ers. But he was a winning coach. a guy that will take your team to the promised land. Now you're in the University of Michigan. Now he's under investigation. Got suspended for 3 games to start this season for
Right.
something that happened during the pandemic, which is wow. Like really, like that was a long time ago. Why are we doing this now? And then all of a sudden this sign stealing stuff. What is going on over there?
All right, let me give you a couple things here. First of all, this is Jim Harbaugh, John, his brother, coach of the Ravens, and their dad, Jack, a longtime coach at Western Kentucky, Western Michigan. Before that, spent some time as the running backs coach at Stanford. They're a coaching family, and Jack and John have done things the right way their entire lives. They're well respected. Jim, on the other hand, is the scumbag of the family, and he has come about in the mold of some of the worst coaches, the Urban Meyers, and the Brian Kellys of the world. Lincoln Riley is another dirtbag that comes to mind. The guys who just jump around. Deion Sanders, the latest example of lying to children's faces to get them to commit somewhere while they're serving their own interests. Jim Harbaugh was already being penalized earlier this year because of recruiting violations, as you mentioned, during COVID. And I think it was like in person, on campus, like stuff you weren't supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
The rules don't apply to Jim Harbaugh. In Jim Harbaugh's mind, it's why, and I can't help but think, does the cheating scandal does this spin off of the investigation into the recruiting violations? You're already investigating Michigan. I think Michigan self-imposed those penalties.
Right.
And I don't think that was a very smart idea, because I think the NCAA ultimately may be a little more harsh on this. And I think that is what led into this. I don't think it's like a disjointed situation where, oh, now it's another thing. I think this came from them investigating a coach who, it looks like you said, Ovi, you said this before the show. Why did he do that? He didn't need to do that. Why did Coach Bill Belichick do the same thing against the Jets?
Right.
And Coach Eric, like against the Jets, that's the team you needed to cheat against. You know, it gets to the point, Ovi, where the rules don't apply. These guys know they're doing the wrong thing, and they don't care.
And the thing is that I think he's going to win this.
Because
mm-hmm.
and it's unfortunate. I was going to tear Urban Meyer's ass last week, and I didn't get an opportunity to, and I want to actually speak on that in a second too, because I see you got the breast cancer awareness, and that is so important. But these coaches, Urban Meyer screwed up at Ohio State, and off he went into the sunset. And then he did it again in Florida, and away he went. In the NFL, where there are ramifications for being a dumbass, he got fired from that job.
Mm-hmm.
In college football, it's a little different. The coach kind of dictates what's going on at the school. In the NFL, the owners do that. And Urban Meyer learned a hard lesson. It's why Jim Harbaugh is in the college ranks. Jim Harbaugh will never be an NFL coach. He will not be able to hack it there.
I don't know. I mean, again, he took the 49ers to the Super Bowl. How can he not handle it?
The rules. He doesn't like being told by a general manager and an owner to be under the constraints of his salary cap. All of those things. Jim Harbaugh doesn't need that in his life. College, do whatever you want. And that's exactly the way he's played it since he's been at Michigan. It's why they've been in trouble multiple times.
So do you mean to tell me, and reading the article about Stalion, that's the guy's name, he is suspended with pay until the investigation is over, which is going to take some time. But he ended up buying over 30 tickets for 11 different games.
Mhm.
He bought seats on both sides of the stadium, right? Just and I think he had supposed devices and stuff that you're not supposed to have to record the sign stealing and stuff like that. And I'm saying to myself, why? I mean, they put up the signs, and now in these games, the coach is able to communicate with the quarterback with a few, I think it was 15 seconds that it lasts, and then it automatically turns off. So they got to get into play real quick, right? And I'm saying to myself, you don't need it. Like you have to tap in to what they're actually saying to each other. That might be the next best thing that they're doing or something like that. You know what I mean? But I don't see what's necessary to sign still anyway. What benefits can you get out of it if we could still watch it on TV? You watch these replays, all these shows, all these podcasts, all these other things that's going on that you could see, and they replay. Look what this guy did and this guy did and stuff like that. Why? What's the
You know,
purpose?
it's funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday about the Giants have not given a lot of snaps to Jalen Hyatt,
Mm-hmm.
and when he comes into the game, they're going deep. And you put him in the game 4 or 5 plays, and it's like, oh, you don't think the defense sees this guy's in the game, and now they've got it figured out what you're doing. The Patriots did the same thing. They brought Malik Cunningham in. They bringing him in for RPO.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Belichick won't let him throw the football.
Today he got released.
And that's why, because Bill Belichick is a moron. Every time Malik Cunningham comes in the game, it's like, bring 11 guys to the line. He's going to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stupid. So there are signs in football that you can read. You don't need to steal the signs. You don't need to know the play. It is taking it to another level. And I'll tell you what, Ovi, if one team knows the other team's play and they're doing it unfairly, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I see that, but
It's
that's
pretty
why you
obvious.
have
The other
50 million
team's like,
people doing signs and acting like a jackass, like doing this, whatever,
yeah,
right?
you need
So who's doing
decoys.
the signs? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Like I feel like there's like every time I look at the sideline, there's always like 6 or 7 different people giving out signals. So which one's the actual primary signal?
That's a
I
great
would never know.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably got multiple decoys
Mm-hmm.
because they know the other teams are trying. And again, listen, you should be trying to figure out the offense and the defense. You should be trying to figure out what's going on. Your Tony Romo do such a great job. Defense comes to the line of scrimmage. Tony tells you what the offensive play is going to be, and then he tells you how the defense, what audible they're going to call to get into the correct. It's fascinating to see that kind of stuff. I mean, it's Tony Romo's not the only person that can do this.
Right.
Clearly, there's and they should be on your sidelines helping you figure this thing out. If you're just standing there and you're trying to steal the signs and this, like, what is wrong with you?
You got all that talent in your team to sign still. That it just doesn't look good.
It's an ugly look, and
It's an ugly look, and then and you're number 2 in the country right now, and you mean to tell me, look, Michigan hasn't played anybody. I still like question why they're still number 2. I know they're blowing everybody out, but is that because they're sign stealing? Is it working from their advantage? I'm just saying, like,
sure. Now you got to wonder.
Now I gotta wonder, like, do they really deserve to be number 2, or should they be out of the top 4?
Although, let's be honest, part of the reason why they're number 2 is so that when they lose to Michigan, when they lose to Ohio State, they drop to 4, and Michigan moves up to 2, and you slide someone into number 3. And
I'm gonna tell you right now, guarantee
you keep your 2 Big Tens in there.
No, it's not gonna happen this year. Sorry.
I agree.
It's not. It's just you gotta have a Pac-12 team, unless they all have 2 losses. But you gotta have a Pac-12, you gotta have an ACC, an SEC, and a Big Ten. I think this year you should have 1 each because it's damn good football. It is, and we'll talk about the rankings in momentarily. But let's move on here to my Brian Kelly look, baby. Yeah. Let's start out with this game. Okay. Penn State versus Ohio State. Keys brothers, I hope you're listening in. But the final score was 20-12. The best game out of this was the fourth quarter. The rest of the game was pretty much so ugly. I had to put it in bold. And it's in a parenthesis. David Hale said this. Ohio State took the win Saturday 20-12 over Penn State in a game that was at turns frustrating and physical, ugly and sublime. There was a lot of combinations here. Okay. The only MVP in this game, okay, was Harrison. Okay. 40. His right now this year, he has 42 receptions, 766 yards, 6 touchdowns. That game right there, he got Ohio State to win the game. If it wasn't for him, Ohio State would look like a high school team. And that's exactly what I was looking at. Their quarterback, McCord, was off his game. And so was Penn State offense. It was an ugly game. Don't tell me it was a defensive battle, because it wasn't. McCord had plenty of time to throw the passes, and he was thrown behind his receivers. There was too many mistakes, and even the commentators were saying the same thing. Okay? Don't tell me that because the defense on both sides of the ball were playing top notch. It wasn't. Not until the fourth quarter, where both teams were actually playing and handling business. Okay? That's why I said I'm questioning both these teams as why were they in the top 10? They didn't even play like they're a top 10 team. And that was the conversation I was texting to the Keys brothers about. This game was whack. It's the weakest ranked game. I'd rather take Oregon and Washington, because that was a better game. And yes, it was a high score game, but it was a playoff game.
You know what?
Okay?
You and I have been questioning both of these teams all year.
Nah, they don't play nobody. The Big Ten
Listen,
is weak.
I just said what I said about Michigan and why
Right.
Michigan's ranked where they are, and why is Penn is. Let me ask you this: if Penn State played Alabama, what would be the final score of that game?
Oh my God. Even with the roster today, they probably win by 20 points.
Right.
Well, Alabama will
20
win.
points. And yet Penn State is ranked ahead of Alabama.
And the thing is, Alabama is getting better each week. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see how at the beginning they couldn't figure out the quarterback, and then all of a sudden now they got this rhythm.
Over the last couple of years, how many times has Penn State been in the top 10? And it's basically to bolster Ohio State and Michigan. That's the only reason Penn State is where they are. Now,
they're the third best team in the Big Ten.
Penn State also plays one of these fruitcake Big Ten schedules, and then they have to face Ohio State, Michigan, and they get murdered. No. This time they kept it close. And I listen, that's more of an indictment of Ohio State than it is a compliment to Penn State. And I think you'll see the difference with Michigan because I think Michigan this year is a much better team than Ohio State. And again, I say that with Michigan also having played a pretty cream puff schedule so far. And we know one of these guys is going to lose to the other in a couple of weeks. The 25th, it's going down. Someone's going to have an L, and they're protecting them as best they can at 2-3 right now.
It's hard to protect with the quality of these other games, okay? And I'm sorry to say, but if Florida State wins out, if any of the Pac-12 wins out, and we're talking about Washington, we're talking about maybe USC, we're talking maybe Oregon, like they will creep up and take over that fourth spot. And I think that, again, one conference per should happen this year.
I doubt that's going to happen, and I'll explain why at the end of the show.
Of course you would. Listen, no, you're on point.
But Ovi, you should be. You should theoretically be right if things were fair.
2 more weeks.
If things were fair and they're not, we're going to end up, I believe, with 2 undefeated teams this year. which will be only the second time in CFP history that there's been 2 undefeated teams.
Right.
It's either 3 or 1. It's only been 2 teams once ever in the CFP. I know that seems kind of crazy. Here's the other thing to all these teams, all the one-loss teams, you're on notice. USC lost again, and everybody's like, they're out. And if you're like a USC fan, you're like, well, they're not. No, they're out. Take a look.
Oh, yeah.
2 losses does not get you in the CFP.
It's never been a 2-loss team.
OB, I don't want to get too into it, but I mean, it's
no. You're good.
The way it already lays out, it's bad news for the Big 12. Listen, the Pac-12 plays great football, and they've got great football teams. And you see these games, that Oregon-Washington 36-33. You've seen some great Oregon State. There's been great games amongst these teams, but somebody inevitably loses those games. Utah's going to have a second loss. Oregon may lose a second time. Oregon State probably loses. I'll break it all down, but the schedules are bad. FSU has got it made in the shade, as does Georgia. Although Georgia plays a bunch of ranked teams out.
No, yep, they finished playing at least 3 of the top 10 in the last 4 games. So
yes,
let's talk about Georgia real quick. Keys, brother, listen in, because I'm learning also from Joe. And a couple of weeks ago on your final whistle, you did say, all right, why is Georgia always number 1? Why do they have a formula? Kirby Smart's doing something. All right, for the last 2 years. All right, Georgia has given up over 10 players to the NFL. That's 20 plus players. All right, I'm not giving you the exact numbers. You do the math. Go investigate. Go do your research. But yeah, Georgia's still number 1. And yeah, we're relying on Carson Beck. All right, yeah, first starting quarterback and everything. He stuck it out. Is he great? Is he better than Stetson Bennett? No, but he's doing his job.
I'll give you this.
That's something that McCord, he's doing his job too. But guess what?
Yeah. I like what you're saying here. Let me tell you something. I think Beck is better than Stetson Bennett was junior year. That Stetson Bennett, that people, maybe JT Daniels should start. They wanted everybody but Stetson Bennett, and he took them to the national championship anyway. Right. Beck is better than that version. Not last year's Stetson Bennett, but definitely better than junior year Stetson Bennett. And if he's somewhere between junior and senior year Stetson Bennett, then Carson Beck's a pretty goddamn good quarterback. And I've been telling you this, they've gotten better every week. They're playing with more confidence. I mean, every week I'm like, oh God,
you question Georgia,
and
they go through.
I hate Georgia. And I hate Kirby Smart. And I hate to give Kirby Smart credit, but you have to. He's really, to me, proven that he's not the second best coach in the SEC.
As of right now, he's the top, right?
He's number 1.
But
I love me some Nick Saban.
We could argue between him and Nick Saban, right? Because it goes either or. And we're going to see that showdown once again in the SEC championship. Definitely will. But hey, speaking about it, and I know we're jumping off into like different subjects and stuff like that, but let's take a look here on the standings. Michigan, Ohio State, if you look at this, why do we have an East and West? Why don't we have a stacked Big Ten and maybe see Michigan and Ohio State play each other again for the second week in a row? Because listen, their weak ass schedule. And I'm being honest with you, they are. So you play Notre Dame, Ohio State. Well, guess what? Notre Dame lost again. All right. They finally beat USC, but ain't USC the team that doesn't have a defense? Yeah. There you go. So here's your Big Ten. Michigan's in the lead. We'll find out who's going to be on top after Thanksgiving. On the other side, you have Wisconsin, who looks like they're going to play the winner of the East Division there. Moving on to the ACC, Duke. They battled all the way, man. I got to give them props 2017, but in the second half, they got shut down. Their starting quarterback went out. Florida State took advantage of it. And look, Florida State took a while and took them to the fourth quarter to score 21 unanswered points. North Carolina got upset to Virginia. Virginia, who's in last place in the ACC. Oh my God, man. It is what it is. It's done. It was a done deal. So much hopes for North Carolina to make it to the college football players. That's not going to happen. Sorry. We're looking in the Pac-12, Utah and USC, 34-32. And Bryson Barnes, you're talking about a quarterback. This is the guy that probably, if he played for Ohio State, could have done a lot better and blow out Penn State. But hey, but here we are, 14 out of 22, 235. He threw 3 touchdown passes and he rushed 1. And when it mattered most, he sacrificed himself. Instead of going out of bounds, he kept on going and going and going because he was smart. He knew he had 1 timeout left. He went as close as he can so he could set up his kicker for the game-winning field goal. That's Utah football right there. All right. Looking at the standings, Washington still in the lead, 4-0. USC, Oregon, Oregon State, Utah, they all have 1 loss. So, as what you pointed out, these guys are going to beat each other up, and you're just going to have to hope that Washington can hang in there all the way to the end so that way they can make it to the college football playoffs.
I mean, that's 6 really outstanding teams at the top of this conference. And by the way, Arizona State, look at their points for and points against. That's only you would think a team that's getting beat up every week. Look at the differential though.
28-point differential.
I mean,
that's still one hell of a game. Look
right
at Washington State though.
Yeah. yeah.
1-3, and they're just getting blown up, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Arizona State, man, they haven't won any games, but it's not like they're
playing
getting
hard.
Again, look at Stanford. They've allowed 204 points.
Mm-hmm.
Good God. That's insane.
But they also played 5 games there, you know what I mean? So
fair enough, but that's still that doesn't make up for that's a lot of points.
SEC, Georgia, the number 1. On the other side, you got Alabama, both undefeated in their conference. Seems like they're going to go all the way and meet at the SEC championship. Georgia will play Missouri. They have to play Tennessee. Okay. Alabama still got to play LSU. They already beat Ole Miss. So it's like there's still a lot of games that need to be played. And Georgia and got themselves a battle this week because they play Florida. That's the rivalry there in Jacksonville.
Yep.
So there's still a lot of football to play there. All right, moving on to the Heisman. Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Blake Coleman, and Jordan Travis. I feel like those are the top 5. But if I was to pick the 5 of them, I'm just going to go ahead and say Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, wide receiver, is well-deserved to win this because if Devontae Smith could do it, so could Harrison. And Harrison's, the way he's playing, could end up breaking the single-season total yards that dated back, I think it was 2021. It was not so long ago where he could set records at Ohio State.
Yeah, well, Devontae Smith was the second best receiver and the second best player on that Alabama team. Yeah, so look, I think anything's possible. If you ask me the odds-on favorite right this minute, I agree. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. Is the guy who's on everybody's mind. Caleb Williams, boy,
he still got it, man. He still got it.
I don't know about that. I
mean, he led his team. He led his team to victory. There was still a lot of time left, and it's just that defense can't hold anybody.
Yeah, but he also didn't throw a touchdown pass.
So
the streak is over. No, I understand that, but you know, he's the five touchdown guy, generally speaking, week in and week out. He had a dud of a game. It wasn't a great game by him.
Right.
Marvin Harrison jumped up. Caleb Williams also lost. Now he's out of the national title picture. I think the spotlight right now, I think it's Marvin Harrison's to lose
Right.
Whereas last week I thought it was still Caleb Williams's to lose.
Well,
I
he
think
lost it, and Michael Penix,
Caleb's gonna
he
have
couldn't
to
even
earn it back.
represent
Yeah, I like
Washington.
Michael Penix
15
Jr.
to
There's
7 win.
Yeah, Penix ain't winning it though.
No,
It's too
no,
bad. He's a
too
good
bad.
kid. I think Jordan Travis, if they run the table, I think he has a legit shot.
Yeah, yeah. Second down, ready? This is the college football players. I'm sorry, the college football playoffs. And next week, the committee is going to start. Okay. But this is my eye test that's going on, right? Top 25 going into week 9. Here we go. If you tune into Sunday's episode on the YouTube channel, you already know my results. But here we go: North Carolina, Toledo, UNLV, Louisville, and Duke. Toledo, UNLV, and UNLV are new to my top 25. Louisville returns. They got back to their winning ways, but I'm still disappointed. Being ranked, they look like Texas. Every time you rank them, then they fall down. Yep. So if you're betting on Louisville this weekend, don't do it, please. All right. North Carolina got their tumble, losing to Virginia. Not so good. And so did Duke. They lost. They're 5-2, hanging on 25. Liberty, Air Force, Tulane, James Madison, and Penn State. That's 16 through 20. There no one's talking about James Madison. They're in the Sun Belt Conference, but you got to give that respect. All right. If you put Air Force in the top 25, especially Air Force going through some injuries, then you got to put also Liberty, because Liberty's in the Conference USA. They're no longer independent, and they're still handling their business. Okay.
James Madison is not bowl eligible.
Is that right?
Yes, because they're new to at this level, they're not allowed to play in the postseason this year.
Oh man, it's too bad.
So I think that's part of what's holding back why they haven't been getting any love a little bit earlier, as opposed to say Air Force or Liberty.
Okay. 11-15, Ole Miss, Texas, Notre Dame, LSU, and Missouri. LSU got that big jump. They got their stride in there. Texas, I know a lot of people like to put Texas in the top 10, but if you look at that game, I mean, they lost Ewers for the season, I believe. He got injured. They're not using Manning as he's now the backup quarterback. So I'm just curious to see what happens with Texas, because they struggle against Houston. Houston's not even ranked.
I don't think Notre Dame or LSU should. Either one of them should be in the top 15. You've already got 2 losses. You're out of. I mean, why are we even screwing around with this? In a scenario where
man, they're going to watch.
That, but listen, in a scenario where a lot of teams lose, Notre Dame and LSU could potentially get into that top 6. I got a problem with that.
Because there's not going to be any room for a non-Power 5 conference to get in there.
Of course there won't be, but 2 lost teams ranked this high at this
point, it
doesn't make any sense to me. I don't like it.
Well,
I don't like it. It's because, listen, LSU is going to lose a 3rd game.
You think they'll lose to Alabama?
Oh, they're going to lose to Alabama, and then you're going to have to tumble them 9 spots right out of the top 25.
If they were to beat Alabama, they'll lose to Georgia.
I would have left them up at like 22. That way, you just dropped them 3 and right out.
Right.
That's
7-10. Oregon State, Alabama, Oregon, and Utah. And then looking at the college football playoffs, this is my outside looking in: Oklahoma and Washington. And then you have Ohio State, Florida State, Michigan, and Georgia to top it off. To go back to it, like I told you, is that Georgia's number 1 for a reason, and they're looking for a 3-peat. And each week they're looking like let's see how they perform after a bye week. That is always like mind-boggling to me, because that rhythm that they had going through, now they had that break, and then you coming back and you really got to play physical against Florida. Let's see. Hopefully they don't have a slow start. Let's put it that way. This is their schedule looking in right now: Florida, Missouri. They play Florida. And then, like I told you, 3 of the last 4, Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, before they played their rivalry game in state against Georgia Tech. This is where we're gonna define Georgia as being the actual number one. They don't
This
look like
is
Michigan or
yeah.
Ohio State.
That is a rough stretch right there. I know
Mhm,
Florida's not ranked and they're not having the greatest of seasons, but Florida is always a dangerous team.
mhm.
Um, and that game, they're at home for that, and they're at home
No,
for
they're at
Missouri.
neutral site
Oh,
with Florida.
neutrals.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Which technically they're still in Florida.
dude, yeah. What again? Right, but I'm saying that's four pretty big games in a row coming up.
Yes.
You look at Michigan's cake schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. Look,
You've got
Purdue.
you've got
Dude,
Penn
if you
State.
think Penn State's still ranked, well, that was the old rankings, right? But again, Penn State being ranked, I told you already, they're their third best Big Ten team.
Yeah,
They're always going to average between 11 and 20.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And of course,
ridiculous.
they
It's
play
straight up
Maryland and then Ohio
ridiculous.
State.
Again, it's just meant to make that game on the 25th all the more sexy.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. We played this really good, highly ranked team that we
Hmm.
all know doesn't deserve to be there. To me, you look at that Florida State schedule, though. Tell me you don't see a zero at the end of it. Big game against Florida. And obviously, look, I think Florida this weekend, and I think Florida the weekend of the 25th, they don't have much to play for this year. That's
No,
gonna
actually they do. Actually, they
that's
do
gonna be
because
what I'm saying. I think
it's
that's
being the
gonna
best
be
of
their
Florida, right?
absolutely. You
Yeah.
want to beat Florida State, and I mean, again,
Hmm.
look, a chance to put a kink in the armor of Georgia. That
Hmm.
would be so great for Florida, and I think we know Florida's got enough talent to hang.
Yeah.
So we'll see what
I don't
happens.
think
I think
SEC is that strong enough. And I think the only team really legit until somebody knocks them down is Georgia.
yeah.
Honestly, I really do. Third down. Here we go. We go sports betting. We'll start off with our rivalry, Georgia versus Florida.
I think this game, boy, that 14 and a half is about right on. I think this is going to be a 12 or 13 point game. I'm going to take Florida with the points. I know that's crazy, but I do. I think this game's going to be it's going to be close. It's probably going to the score might be closer than the way the game even feels. It might feel
Okay.
like a good Georgia win, and I still think it might only be about 12.
I'm gonna take the points for Georgia. I think it's gonna be a slow start at the beginning. I think once Georgia gets their rhythm, Carson Beck, and really you got to have a good running game so that Carson Beck could actually throw the ball. But I think the second half Georgia will take over and they will cover. They will cover the points there.
I
Moving
could
on to
see them winning.
Oregon.
I could see them winning by 20, you bastard. I totally can.
Oregon versus Utah. This is the game of the week, in my opinion. This is going to be a good battle. Utah. Again, we just talked about their quarterback Barnes, and I still think that's not enough for Utah to get by Oregon. And again, it's that one loss, and Oregon suffering that loss to Washington. I think they want to get back into it. I'm taking Oregon 4.5 over Utah.
I think Utah wins this football game.
I love
So
it. Go
I'm
right
going to
ahead. I
take
love
the
it.
points. I think Utah ruins Oregon's season. This feels to me like what happens all the time.
Wow.
Oregon gets
I hope
Oregon
not.
gets into the top 10, they lose to Utah, and then Utah in 2 weeks will lose to Oregon State. Their second loss will effectively eliminate them as well.
I want to see a one-loss team of Oregon on one-loss team Oregon State to go battle that last game.
That would be
That
marvelous.
will be
I
yes,
would love
yes,
that. I would love
absolutely.
that. It would
Yeah.
guarantee a Pac-12 team potentially makes the CFP, but Utah's going to win this game, and then you'll see exactly what I just said is going to play out. It's ridiculous.
Oregon's going to win.
Utah.
Duke versus Louisville, another ranked game. Duke suffering a loss to Florida State. This is the spread came at 4 points earlier this week. They might be changed. I'm taking Louisville on this game because Duke lost their starting quarterback.
Okay, I'm going to take Louisville because, and we knew this. We knew this about Duke, and we know this about North Carolina. For Christ's sake, those are basketball schools. Okay? And they both got off to cute starts. Oh, God. Come on. This is football. All right? Louisville's still a football school, in my opinion. I think Louisville takes the screws to Duke. They're going to beat them by more than 4 points, so whatevs. Louisville by a solid 12-14 in this one.
All right. Ohio State versus Wisconsin. Top teams from each division of the Big Ten. Ohio State's favorite at 13.5 points. I'm taking Wisconsin's points, but Ohio State wins the game.
Okay, Ohio State will win this football game, and I think sort of like your Georgia scenario, I think they pull away by about 15-16 towards the end of this game. Ohio State, if you bet on Ohio State, you're going to be nervous till there's about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They'll move past the 14, and you'll be covered. Don't worry about it. Take them Buckeyes.
I don't want to hear no excuses if their running backs didn't play there, the Key brothers. Just telling you right now. All right. McCord better play right. If McCord is good and he's on point and stop missing his receivers, then I could see a big blowout. But right now, I mean, I don't think Wisconsin's going to fall on their asses at home against Ohio State like that.
That's what Wisconsin does, though, to be fair.
Old Dominion, James Madison. I'm picking James Madison on this game. The 17.5. These are the top two teams in the Sun Belt Conference. Madison is going to run away against Old Dominion.
Well, I've got news for you. Old Dominion's going to win this football game.
Of course, you would say that.
I know. Listen, here's the thing. James Madison, it's a beautiful story. And I mentioned before, I just found out they're new to the FSB, FBS, whatever you want to call it. As a result of that, they're not bowl eligible. And again, I think that's taken some of the luster away from this team, but they're not running the table. They're not going undefeated. And the most likely, if you look at their schedule game, they're going to lose. It's this one. And that 17.5, that's lofty. James Madison's going in there. They're at home, feeling good about themselves. I think Old Dominion's going to take it to them, and they're going to win the game. And I'll be honest, I think Old Dominion wins this game by double digits.
Wow, that's a bold prediction you got there.
Yeah, this is going to be such a punch in the face for James Madison. He's not going to know what hit him.
All right. I had to put this in here.
I'm glad you
I
did.
know. I had to put this in here. UConn came so close to beating South Florida. They had the lead, and their defense could not hold them back, and they lost. They're 1-6. UConn now has to win out in order to be bowl eligible, and they're going against Boston College, okay? This is the same team that almost gave an upset to Florida State. But yeah, Boston College loses to the sorriest teams ever. And they only giving Boston College 12 points because they don't trust the Eagles, the Fighting Eagles.
Clearly.
I'm taking UConn at 12 points plus 12.
Hold on. Here's what people should know. You are a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
Yes.
However, you have a lover. And it is the UConn Huskies.
Absolutely. Home state, baby.
That's your hometown team.
So the reason why,
the fact that for most of the time, both of us have been living in Connecticut. And for me, it's about 46 years of my life I've been living here. UConn is always pretty bad.
Yeah.
Last year
they had a good comeback.
No, they did. And they
made it to the bowl game.
That was insane.
It is.
You think it's going to happen again?
But the UConn's cursed with starting quarterbacks because back-to-back years, very first game, something happens to the quarterback and they're out for the season.
Yeah, but let's be clear. Why does something happen to the quarterback? Though the reason is because the offensive line's never good.
And 12 points. I think they're gonna have it a game. They came close against South Florida. They'll go close. They will be close. I'm not saying they're gonna win, but if they win, that's a plus. But I'm still taking 12 for the UConn Huskies.
Boston College, I think, wins this one probably by 3 scores.
And if you look, it's the cheapest ticket, $7. You gotta watch it. Just saying.
A lot of value to this game.
7-point difference, $7, baby. All right. Let's go back. Florida State versus Wake Forest. Florida State undefeated. They're 7-0, 5-0 in an ACC. They're 20-point spread. I'm taking the 20 points.
Boy, this is a tough one. I mean, I think Florida State's easily going to win this football game. Do they beat Wake by 20?
There's a reason why Sam Hartman left that team.
Yeah. Again, my fear is that they win by like 17 or 18.
You can't fear. You can't put the fear
I know.
in that. Go with your gut. Let's go.
I'll go with Florida covers the 20, but if this ends up being a 17 or 18-point game, I swear to God, next week I'm going to be like, I knew it.
You persuaded me a couple of games in a row. Take Florida State. Take it. And guess what? We're also going to take 4th down and your final whistle.
I love it.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, OV. Here we are. 6 undefeated schools remain in the top 10. However, it is highly unlikely that more than 2 will still be there come January. And let me explain why. Ohio State and Michigan play each other November 25th. Georgia and Washington both have 3 more games versus ranked opponents. Oklahoma always finds a way to lose a game. Now, Alabama and Texas lead the current brigade of 1-loss teams waiting for one of these top 6 teams to fall. There's also Utah, Oregon State, Oregon, Ole Miss, Mizzou, and Penn State. Now, tap the brakes because 1-loss teams are not the exception when it comes to the college football playoffs. It's the rule. 22 of the 36 teams to make the CFP, 61% have had at least 1 loss. In 2017, all 4 CFP teams had a loss, including Alabama, who won the national championship. And get this, according to ESPN stats and information, Alabama has finished in the top 4 with a loss 4 times and have 2 national titles to show for it. That said, Ovi mentioned this earlier, no team has made the playoffs with 2 losses. So USC, LSU, Notre Dame, Tennessee. See you next year. Only 38% of teams that have made it to the college football playoffs have been undefeated. And only in 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020 has there been more than 1 undefeated team in the CFP. Both those times, it was 3 out of the 4. So you could survive 1 loss. But 2 is basically an instant disqualification from the playoffs. Thank you so much for watching. From my boy, O.V. Moniz, I'm Joe Aguirre. We'll see you next week for All 4 Downs.